Emma Carter, 18, gripped the steering wheel of her mom's old Toyota. The dashboard clock glowing 10:57 p.m. Richmond, Virginia, was quiet, the east side streets empty under a cold March sky. She'd just left her journalism class at the community college, her notebook stuffed with ideas for a piece on local youth activism. Her brown eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, a habit from years of driving these roads alone since her mom's accident 5 years ago, a crash the police called routine but never fully explained. That loss had carved a quiet distrust in Emma, a weight she carried like the faint scar on her knuckles from gripping her pen too tight. The yellow light at Prospect Avenue blinked ahead. Emma eased through just as it turned red, her heart steady, she'd done nothing wrong. But then, red and blue lights flashed behind her, silent, no siren. A patrol car cut in front, boxing her in. Her breath hitched. 2 officers stepped out, Robert Carson, tall and broad, his jaw set like stone, Michael Brenner, shorter, with eyes that darted like he was hunting. No greeting, no request for ID. Carson's voice was a low growl. Ran a red light, huh? Think the rules don't apply at night? Emma's hand stayed on the wheel, her voice soft but firm. Sir, it was yellow when I crossed. Brenner leaned in, his face inches from hers, breath sour. Black kids talking back now? Her heart pounded, memories of her mom's case flashing, reports buried, questions unanswered. Before she could respond, Carson yanked the door open. Out. Now. Her arm twisted as they pulled her from the car, the cold metal of handcuffs biting her wrists. I didn't do anything, she gasped, but a fist, Carson's, slammed into her cheek. Pain exploded, her head crashing against the car door. Another blow followed, Brenner's hand gripping her hair, slamming her face into the pavement. Blood pooled under her lips, hot and humiliating. She didn't scream, couldn't, her throat was raw, her mind blank with shock. They laughed. Carson's voice was sharp. Bet she'll shut up now. Brenner chuckled, casual, like they'd just won a bet. Already quiet. Can't talk back with a busted lip. The street was empty, no witnesses, no cameras, or so they thought. Emma's vision blurred, her cheek throbbing, but one thought cut through, Dad always said, survive, and I'll handle the rest. Miles away, James Carter, 45, jolted awake on his couch, the TV droning a basketball game. A retired Navy SEAL, he'd traded missions for a quiet life raising Emma after his wife, Lisa, died in that crash. Guilt clung to him, he'd been overseas when it happened, unable to protect her. The phone rang, an unknown number at 11:42 p.m. His instincts, honed from years in war zones, snapped on. Mr. Carter, this is Officer Mendez from Richmond PD. Your daughter Emma was assaulted during a traffic stop. She's at Memorial Hospital. James didn't hear the rest. His blood ran cold, his body rigid as if hit by shrapnel. Is she conscious? He asked, voice low, unrecognizable even to himself. Responsive. EMTs are treating her. Come quickly. He hung up, no questions, no hesitation. Keys in hand, he left the house, door unlocked, shoes forgotten. The man who'd once dismantled a terror cell without a sound was now a father racing to his daughter, his world collapsing with every red light he ran. At the hospital, James saw her, Emma, his fierce, bright girl, unrecognizable. Her cheek was bruised purple, her eye swollen shut, blood crusting her lips. Handcuff marks scarred her wrists, her braids tangled with dirt. He touched her hand, cold as ice, and felt a rage so deep it was silent, like the calm before a detonation. Emma's one open eye met his, her voice a whisper. They laughed, Dad. They laughed. James squeezed her hand, not to comfort but to anchor himself. His SEAL training taught him to read a battlefield in seconds, but this was no mission. This was his daughter, broken by men who swore to protect. In that moment, James Carter wasn't just a father. He was a man whose past had just reignited, and the system that hurt Emma had no idea what they'd unleashed. James Carter sat in the hospital's sterile waiting room, the fluorescent lights buzzing like a warning. His hands, calloused from years gripping rifles in deserts and jungles, rested on his knees, still but ready, like a coiled spring. Emma was in surgery, stitches for her lip, scans for her skull. The doctor's words echoed, "She's stable," but the trauma, James didn't need the rest. He'd seen trauma before, not just in war but in the mirror after Lisa's death. 5 years ago, a drunk driver took her, and the Richmond PD called it a closed case despite missing reports and untested evidence. James had been in Syria, too far to demand answers. That guilt, failing his wife, now burned hotter as he faced failing Emma too. He closed his eyes, not to rest but to focus. His SEAL training kicked in, mapping the situation like a combat zone. 2 officers, Carson and Brenner, targeted Emma for her skin, not a crime. No body cam footage, no witnesses, too clean for a coincidence. James knew systems like this didn't break by accident, they were built to hide. His mind flashed to Lisa's case, the officer who lost her file, the detective who shrugged at his questions. This wasn't just about Emma. This was a machine that chewed up lives and spat out lies. His phone buzzed, a text from Theo Marshall, his old SEAL teammate. "Heard about Emma. I'm in town. Say the word." Theo, a black veteran turned cybersecurity expert, had his own scars from profiling stops in his youth. James didn't hesitate. "Meet me at the old diner, Lexington and 9th, 0600. He needed Theo's skills, but more, he needed someone who understood the fight wasn't just personal, it was systemic. At dawn, the diner smelled of burnt coffee and grease. Theo slid into the booth, his khaki jacket faded, his eyes sharp as ever. "They hit your kid, James. What's the play?" James leaned forward, voice low. "They think I'm just a dad who'll file a complaint and wait. They're wrong." He slid a hospital photo of Emma's bruised face across the table. Theo's jaw tightened. "This isn't one rogue cop. You're talking a network." James nodded. "I've got a USB from a contact, traffic cam footage from that night. It shows Emma didn't run the light. The report's a lie." Theo's eyes narrowed. "If they're burying footage, they're burying more. I can dig, server logs, body cam records, anything they didn't wipe clean." James's gaze didn't waver. "Do it. But we're not just exposing them. We're dismantling them." Back home, James opened a locked drawer in his garage, pulling out a battered oak box. Inside, a faded SEAL dagger, a notebook of old contacts, and a titanium watch, scratched from a close call in Nigeria. He hadn't touched it since retiring, believing that life was behind him. Now, it was his lifeline. He dialed a number from memory, Shirley Evans, a retired police records manager who'd worked Lisa's case. She'd quit after seeing too many files disappear. Her voice answered, steady but tired. "James, I heard. You're not calling to chat. I need the truth, Shirley. About the department. About who's covering for who." A pause, then her reply, "Come to my place tomorrow. I kept records they thought I burned." James hung up, his pulse steady but his mind racing. He wasn't the grieving husband anymore, nor the retired vet coaching Emma's soccer games. He was the man who'd once toppled warlords in silence, and now he'd turn that precision on a system that thought it could break his daughter and walk away. Emma's hospital room was quiet when he returned. She slept, her face still swollen, her breathing uneven. James sat beside her, his hand hovering over hers, afraid to touch and wake the pain. Her journal lay on the bedside table, open to a page. "I want to write stories that make people listen, not just hear." James's chest tightened. Emma wasn't just his daughter, she was a fighter, like him, but her battlefield was words, not weapons. He whispered, though she couldn't hear, "I'll make them listen, Emma. I promise." The war had begun, not with gunfire, but with a father's vow to tear down the machine that dared to silence his daughter's voice. James Carter stood in Shirley Evans's cramped living room, the air thick with the scent of soil from her potted plants. The blinds were half drawn, casting slanted shadows across a laminated blueprint of the Richmond PD's internal structure, laid out on her coffee table. Shirley, 60, her hands stained from years of gardening and filing reports, tapped a gray-coated section. "These are the ghosts," she said, voice sharp. "No titles, no desks, but they touch every report, every camera log. They decide what stays, what vanishes." James studied the names, some familiar from Lisa's case, officers who'd dodged questions, IT staff who'd misplaced data. Shirley had been the department's lead records manager, a keeper of truths until she saw how truths were buried. After Lisa's crash, she'd flagged inconsistencies, only to be sidelined, her reports shredded. She stayed in Richmond, not out of fear, but to hold on to the evidence no one else would. "I didn't leave because I couldn't," she said, eyes meeting James's. "I stayed because someone has to remember." James nodded, his mind mapping connections. The USB from his contact showed Emma's traffic stop, clearly no red light violation, yet the official report claimed noncompliance. He'd seen this before, Lisa's accident, labeled a single vehicle fault, despite witnesses reporting a second car. "It's not just Emma," he said. "How many others?" Shirley pulled a tin box from a drawer, filled with handwritten notes. 17 cases since I left. All minorities, all young. Same phrases in every report, resisting, threatening posture. Same officers, Carson, Brenner. Same IT guy, Fry, wiping logs. Theo Marshall joined them, his laptop open, fingers flying across the keys. A black veteran who'd faced routine stops growing up, Theo's anger wasn't loud but surgical. "Their server's a sieve," he said, pulling up a log. Body cams went offline during Emma's stop, but not at 2 other intersections that night. Fry patched the system 18 minutes after. "Someone's cleaning up fast." James's jaw tightened. "Who's giving the orders?" Theo's screen flickered, revealing a cached video fragment, Emma, reaching for her wallet, then Carson's fist. No audio, but the image burned, her head snapping back, her body slumping. James's breath stopped, his training the only thing keeping him from breaking the table. "That's enough," he said, voice low. "We find the chain, from Carson to whoever's pulling the strings." Shirley traced a line on the blueprint to Dominic Kane, a former aide to Chief Whitaker. "Kane's the fixer. No badge, but he's in every closed-door meeting. If a report needs burying, he's there." James remembered Kane's name from Lisa's case, a shadow who never signed anything but was always mentioned. "We need proof," James said. "Not just Emma's video. The whole system." Theo nodded, already coding a script to filter metadata for patterns, body cam offline, signal failure, non-compliant subject. The results lit up, 17 incidents, all in black neighborhoods, all with no footage, all dismissed. "This isn't sloppy," Theo said. "It's a playbook." James stared at the screen, seeing not just Emma but every name on that list, kids like her, silenced by a machine that wore badges. His guilt over Lisa flared, but so did his resolve. He'd failed to protect his wife, but he wouldn't let Emma's truth be erased. "We're not stopping at proof," he said. "We're exposing the root." The abandoned warehouse in Richmond's industrial zone smelled of rust and damp concrete. James Carter, Theo Marshall, and Shirley Evans worked under a single flickering bulb, turning the space into a war room. Theo's monitors glowed, displaying hacked server logs and grainy traffic cam stills. Shirley's blueprint lay pinned to a plywood board, red lines connecting names to incidents. James stood, arms crossed, his SEAL instincts mapping every exit, every blind spot. This wasn't Syria, but it felt like a mission, high stakes, no margin for error. Theo, 47, leaned back, rubbing his eyes. He'd spent hours digging through Richmond PD's servers, his fingers as precise as when he defused IEDs. Growing up black in Baltimore, he'd been stopped by cops for looking suspicious. At 16, his dreams of engineering nearly derailed by a system that saw him as a threat. Now, he channeled that anger into code, pulling fragments of deleted footage. Found another video, he said, voice tight. Same night as Emma's. A black kid, 19, dragged from his car. No charges, no record. Carson and Brenner again. James's eyes locked on the screen, the image blurry but clear enough, a young man pinned to a hood, Brenner's hand raised. They're not just covering up, James said. They're hunting. His mind flashed to Lisa's crash, her car totaled, the other driver never named, the case closed before he could return from deployment. He'd buried that pain to raise Emma, but now it fueled him. We need more than videos. We need their confessions. Shirley, her gray hair pulled back, nodded. She'd spent 20 years in the department, filing reports that vanished when they named the wrong officer. After Lisa's death, she'd tried to push for an investigation, only to be stonewalled. I kept copies, she said, sliding a USB across the table. Internal memos, transfer orders, all pointing to Kane. He's the bridge between the street and the chief's office. Her voice carried the weight of someone who'd stayed silent too long, not out of fear but to protect her kids. Now, with them grown, she was done hiding. James took the USB, his fingers brushing the faded steel dagger in his pocket. We set a trap, he said. Somewhere they feel safe, where they'll talk. Theo grinned, a rare spark in his tired eyes. Safehouse Alpha, old warehouse, no cameras, off the grid. I can rig mics, encrypt the feed to an off-site server. Shirley added, Kane's arrogant. Leak a fake report that I've got sensitive files. He'll come, and Carson will follow. James paced, his mind running scenarios like he once did for hostage rescues. We need someone inside, he said. Someone who sees the system but isn't fully part of it. Shirley's eyes narrowed. Ramirez. Young cop, Latino, joined to make a difference. He's been quiet, but he was there that night, across the street, watching. He didn't stop it, but he didn't join in either. Theo pulled up Ramirez's file, 28, top academy scores, but no promotions. Kid's got a family to protect, Theo said. Immigrant parents, sister in college. He's stuck between loyalty and fear. James nodded, recognizing the bind. He'd trained men like Ramirez, good soldiers trapped by bad orders. I'll talk to him, James said. Not to threaten, but to show him there's a way out. As they planned, James glanced at a photo of Emma taped to the board, her high school portrait, smiling, before the bruises. Her journal entry echoed in his mind, I want to write stories that make people listen. This wasn't just about justice for Emma, it was about giving her a world where her voice wouldn't be silenced again. The alliance was set, James's resolve, Theo's tech, Shirley's memory. They weren't just fighting for one night. They were fighting to break a machine that had crushed too many for too long. Emma Carter sat in her bedroom, the curtains drawn, the faint hum of Richmond's evening traffic seeping through the window. Her journal lay open, her pen hovering over a blank page. The words wouldn't come. 3 weeks had passed since the assault, and her face still bore shadows, fading bruises, a scar on her lip that stung when she spoke. At 18, she'd dreamed of writing stories that exposed truth, inspired change. Now, every time she tried, her hands shook, memories crashing in, Carson's fist, Brenner's laugh, the pavement's cold bite. Worse, the echo of her mom's crash, sirens, a police report that lied, a loss she'd never fully grieved. She avoided mirrors, not because of the bruises but because her eyes looked like a stranger's, haunted, unsure. Driving was worse. The Toyota sat in the driveway, untouched since that night. Every time she approached it, her chest tightened, her pulse racing like she was back at that intersection, red and blue lights flashing. Her mom's accident had already made her wary of the road. Now, the will felt like a weapon aimed at her. James checked on her daily, his presence steady but careful, like he was afraid to push too hard. "You don't have to be okay yet," he'd said last night, his voice soft but heavy with guilt. Emma knew he blamed himself, for not being there, for not stopping it. She wanted to tell him it wasn't his fault, but the words stuck, tangled in her fear. She wasn't just scared of driving or police, she was scared of who she'd become if she let that night define her. At school, whispers followed her. Classmates stared, some with pity, others with curiosity. Her journalism teacher, Ms. Harper, had pulled her aside. "Write it down, Emma. Not for them, for you." That afternoon, Emma tried. She wrote one line, "They laughed while I bled." Her pen stopped, her throat tight. The memory wasn't just pain, it was humiliation, the way they stripped her of dignity, called her non-compliant like she was nothing. But beneath that, something stirred. Anger, not loud but sharp, like a spark in dry grass. She wrote another line, "I'm still here." Theo visited one evening, his laptop bag slung over his shoulder. He didn't talk about James's plan, just sat with her in the living room. "I was 16, he said, unprompted. Cop stopped me for walking home too late. Said I looked suspicious. I didn't fight, didn't talk back, but I never forgot how small they made me feel." Emma looked at him, surprised. Theo's calm, his strength, made her think he'd never been broken. "How'd you get past it?" she asked. He shrugged. "Didn't. I just decided they don't get to decide who I am." That night, Emma stood by the Toyota, keys in hand. Her heart pounded, but she opened the door, slid into the driver's seat. The leather smelled familiar, grounding. She didn't start the engine, just sat, hands on the wheel, breathing through the panic. Flashbacks came, her mom's voice, "You're stronger than you know," then Carson's sneer. She gripped the wheel harder, whispering, "I'm not what they called me." It wasn't a victory, not yet, but it was a start. She wasn't writing for the world yet, but for herself, reclaiming the voice they tried to silence, one trembling word at a time. The warehouse, dubbed Safehouse Alpha, sat in Richmond's forgotten industrial zone, its rusted beams and cracked concrete walls a perfect blind spot. James Carter, Theo Marshall, and Shirley Evans worked in near silence, their movements precise, like a unit prepping for a covert op. Theo rigged 3 microcameras in the ceiling, their lenses hidden in rusted bolts, wired to an encrypted server in a van 3 blocks away. Shirley pinned her blueprint to the wall, marking entry points and escape routes. James checked a duffel bag, zip ties, voice recorders, a spoofed router to mimic a police network. This wasn't a courtroom, it was a battlefield, and they were setting a trap for Carson and Kane. James's plan was simple but ruthless: lure the officers into confessing their cover-ups on record. Theo had crafted a fake internal memo, leaked through an old dispatch channel only insiders like Kane would access. It read, "Shirley Evans has retrieved 2019 misconduct files. Intent to expose patrol irregularities. Location, East Industrial Zone, Lot 7. Shirley's history as a whistleblower made it believable, her silence since retiring made it urgent. "They'll come," Shirley said, her voice steady. "Kane can't risk those files surfacing." Theo's monitors showed the memo's trace, someone had accessed it within hours. Kane's phone pinged, Theo said, eyes on the screen. "He's already texting Carson." James nodded, his SEAL training mapping every variable: Kane's arrogance, Carson's volatility, the department's fear of exposure. We need them to talk, James said. Not just about Emma, about the whole system. Shirley volunteered to play the bait, sitting in the warehouse with a fake file folder, her calm masking years of suppressed rage. She'd seen the system protect men like Cain while burying cases like Lisa's. I'm not acting, she told James. I've wanted to face these bastards for years. Theo rigged her with a hidden mic, its signal bouncing through 3 VPNs to an offshore drive. No one's wiping this, he said, his own history with profiling fueling his precision. James met Officer Daniel Ramirez at a diner off 14th Street, the neon sign flickering outside. Ramirez, 28, sat stiffly, his uniform crisp but his eyes tired. He'd grown up in a Latino neighborhood, his parents immigrants who taught him to trust the system. Joining the force was his way to give back, but 3 years in, he'd seen reports altered, complaints ignored. He was there the night Emma was beaten, frozen across the street, hating himself for staying silent. I didn't hit her, he told James, voice low. But I didn't stop it either. James slid a still from Emma's video across the table, her bruised face, blood on her lips. You can't undo that night, James said, not accusing, just stating. But you can choose what you do now. Ramirez exhaled, his hands trembling. They'll ruin me. My family, James leaned in. They're already ruining you, Daniel. Every day you stay silent, you lose more of yourself. Ramirez looked away, then nodded. Tell me what you need. Ramirez agreed to leak a tip to Carson. Shirley's files were unsecured, an easy grab. It was enough to draw them to Safehouse Alpha. As James left, he felt the weight of his own words. He'd once believed silence kept you safe too, until Lisa's death, until Emma's screams. Now, with Theo's tech, Shirley's courage, and Ramirez's fragile alliance, the trap was set. The system thought it was untouchable, but James was about to prove it could bleed. Safehouse Alpha was a tomb of shadows, its single bulb casting a dim glow over Shirley Evans's face as she sat, a fake file folder on the table. Her hands trembled just enough to sell the act, nervous, cornered, but her eyes were steel. Upstairs, James Carter watched 3 infrared feeds on his laptop, his breath steady, SEAL training keeping his pulse low. Theo Marshall, in a van 3 blocks away, monitored the encrypted signal, his fingers poised over the keyboard. The trap was set, and at 10:17 p.m., the door creaked open. Robert Carson entered first, his buzzcut catching the light, his stride heavy with confidence. Behind him, Dominic Kane, lean and sharp-eyed, scanned the room like a predator. Shirley stood, clutching the folder. I don't want trouble, she said, voice wavering. I just need to know I'm safe. Carson smirked, stepping closer. You're safe if you hand that over. Files like that cause accidents. Kane's phone buzzed, but he ignored it, his voice cold. You know how this works, Shirley. Silence keeps you alive. James's earpiece crackled with Theo's voice, recordings live. FBI channel open. Shirley pressed a hidden trigger under the table, confirming the mic was active. Carson leaned in, his tone casual but venomous. Emma Carter was number 12. Black kid, big mouth. Easy to shut up. We've done it before, clean, no headlines. Kane nodded, adding, the system's built for it. Logs vanish, cameras fail. No one asks twice in this city. Shirley's face stayed neutral, but her heart raced, memories of Lisa's buried case flooding back. You're saying it's policy? She asked, voice low. Carson laughed, a sound like gravel. Policy? It's survival. Kids like her think they're untouchable. We teach them otherwise. Kane's eyes narrowed. You talk, Shirley, your son in Ohio's next. Grant High, right? Easy target. Every word was captured, streaming to a federal server, untouchable by Richmond PD. Upstairs, James's grip tightened on the laptop, his daughter's bruised face flashing in his mind. He wanted to storm down, break Carson's jaw, but he held back. Restraint was his weapon now. The confession was the bullet. Theo's voice came through again, "FBI's got it. 3 agents listening live." Shirley pushed further, her voice steady now. "You're not scared of the feds?" Kane scoffed. "They need proof. We control the proof. Always have." The door behind them opened, no sound, just James stepping from the shadows. Carson reached for his gun, but James was faster, disarming him with a precise twist, the Glock clattering to the floor. "Don't," James said, voice low, lethal. "You've said enough." Kane froze, his confidence cracking. James didn't touch them, didn't need to. His presence, calm, unrelenting, filled the room like a storm. "You thought you could break my daughter and walk away," he said, eyes locked on Carson. "You thought I'd beg the system to fix itself. You're wrong." Shirley stood, slipping the mic into her pocket. "It's over," she said, not to them but to the ghosts of every case she'd seen buried. Carson's face paled, Kane's phone still in hand, useless now. The recording had already reached Washington, their voices damning them in ways no badge could shield. James didn't strike, didn't shout. He let their own words bury them, the weight of their confession heavier than any fist. The system they served had just cracked, and they were the first to feel its collapse. By dawn, the recording from Safehouse Alpha was everywhere. Theo had uploaded a 2-minute, 46-second clip to an anonymous platform, no title, just a caption, "Hear what they say when they think no one's listening." Within hours, it racked up 10,000 shares, then 1 million. Social media exploded, #JusticeForEmma trended nationwide, posts flooding with outrage and grief. A black student's tweet went viral, "Emma Carter's my friend, not a suspect." How many more? News outlets picked it up, headlines screaming, "Richmond cops confess to cover UPS." James Carter watched from a safe house, his laptop open, the screen glowing with clips of protests outside Richmond PD. Emma's high school was swarmed with reporters, students holding signs, "Emma's not a statistic." Her journal entries, shared by classmates, spread online, "I want to write stories that make people listen." The words hit James like a punch. He'd fought for her truth, but her voice was sparking the fire. He felt pride, but also fear, the system wouldn't fall quietly. Chief Whitaker's press conference was a disaster. He stood at the podium, gray suit crisp, but his eyes betrayed panic. "We're evaluating the recording's authenticity," he said, voice flat, avoiding Emma's name. A reporter cut in, "Was Emma Carter's assault a technical error?" Whitaker stammered, "We're reviewing procedures." The room erupted, murmurs turning to shouts. A blogger posted, "He didn't say sorry. He didn't say her name. That's the system talking." Theo, monitoring from the van, grinned grimly. "FBI's moving," he told James over a secure line. 3 agents filed the recording with oversight. "It's out of Richmond's hands." Shirley, at her home, watched the news, her hands steady for the first time in years. She'd kept silent to protect her kids, but now her silence had turned into a blade, cutting through decades of lies. "They thought I forgot," she said to herself, pruning her bougainvillea. "I never did." Emma saw the chaos online from her hospital bed, her phone buzzing with notifications. Her classmates' posts, stranger support, it overwhelmed her. She typed a single tweet, "I'm still here. Thank you." It wasn't much, but it was hers, a reclaiming of her voice. The fear still lingered, every siren made her flinch, but the anger was stronger now, a fire she could shape. She opened her journal, writing, "They tried to erase me, but the world heard me anyway." Protests grew, not just in Richmond but across Virginia. Parents, veterans, students, people who'd felt the system's weight, marched, demanding federal probes. Carson and Kane were on leave, not charged, their absence a weak shield for a department unraveling. The recording wasn't just evidence, it was a mirror, forcing a nation to face a truth it had ignored too long. James watched, knowing this was only the start. The system was wounded, but it was still alive, and it fought dirtiest when cornered. Officer Daniel Ramirez walked into the Richmond PD locker room, the air thick with tension. Eyes avoided him, colleagues who once clapped his shoulder now turned away. At 28, he'd joined the force to be a bridge, between his Latino community and a system he thought could change. His parents, immigrants who'd worked double shifts to send him to college, believed in him. But 3 years in, he'd seen the truth, reports rewritten, footage erased, kids like Emma labeled threats. The night of her assault, he'd stood across the street, frozen, his silence a betrayal he couldn't shake. A text from Theo had come that morning, "You're exposed. Meet at the shipping yard, 2300. Ramirez wiped his phone, left it behind, and walked to the abandoned lot. James Carter was already there, sitting on a rusted container, his eyes calm but piercing. "You didn't leak the recording," James said, not accusing. "But you asked the wrong question to the wrong person." Ramirez nodded, his throat tight. "I asked about Kane's transfers. They knew I was digging." James handed him a USB with a still of Emma's bruised face. "You saw this happen. You didn't stop it. Why?" Ramirez looked away, the memory burning, Carson's fist, Emma's cry, his own feet rooted to the ground. "I thought I could fix it from inside," he said. "My family, they need me to keep this job. But every day, I'm less of who I wanted to be." James's voice was steady. "You're not lost yet, Daniel. Help me finish this." Ramirez agreed to feed intel to the FBI, bypassing the department. He slipped Theo a list of Kane's contacts, names tied to buried cases. It was small, but it was enough to link Kane to Chief Whitaker, exposing the chain of command. The next day, Ramirez was reassigned to desk duty, a quiet punishment. He didn't go back. Instead, he met Theo in a diner, passing a final file, transfer logs showing Carson and Brenner's reassignments after complaints, all signed by Whitaker. "I could lose everything," Ramirez said, his hands shaking. Theo, who'd faced his own battles with the system, looked him in the eye. "You already are, staying silent. This is how you take something back." Ramirez nodded, a weight lifting, not fully but enough to breathe. He wasn't a hero, not yet, but he was no longer a bystander. His family's pride, his own dreams of reform, they'd cost him, but they also gave him a reason to act. James watched from a distance, knowing Ramirez's choice wasn't just about intel. It was about a man reclaiming his spine, choosing truth over safety. The system would try to crush him, but James wouldn't let him fall alone. He sent a file to the FBI, naming Whitaker as the head of the cover-up network. It was a risk, Emma's name would resurface in the chaos, but Ramirez's sacrifice demanded it. The fight wasn't just James's anymore, it was a chain of people, broken but standing, refusing to let the system win. Emma Carter, 18, stood in the dim light of an underground lot, her father's silver-gray Toyota parked before her. The scratch by the mirror, from that night 3 months ago, caught her eye, but she didn't flinch. She'd spent weeks avoiding this car, the wheel a reminder of Carson's fist, Brenner's laugh, the pavement's cold. But today, her journal tucked in her bag, she felt something new, not fear, not anger, but resolve. She'd written her story, shared it online, and the world had listened. Now, she needed to drive, not to prove anything, but to reclaim what was hers. She opened the door, the hinge creaking softly. Sliding in, she gripped the wheel, her hands steady despite the faint tremor in her chest. Her mom's voice echoed, "You're stronger than you know," mingling with the memory of that night. She turned the key, the engine humming low. Theo Marshall stood nearby, silent, his presence a quiet anchor. Emma drove a slow lap around the lot, each turn deliberate, her breath easing. The headlights swept across concrete, lighting scars but also a path forward. After 5 laps, she stopped, eyes on the road beyond, where red lights blinked like a challenge she'd face one day. James Carter watched from the shadows, his heart heavy but proud. He'd fought for her, exposed a system that tried to erase her, but this, Emma at the wheel, was her victory. Later, in a quiet safe house, he slid a small tin box across the table. Inside was his seal coin, tarnished but heavy, eagle and anchor etched deep. "This isn't about being a soldier," he said, voice low, raw with months of guilt and love. "It's about knowing you survived because you chose to, not because they let you." Emma touched the coin, her fingers tracing its edges. She saw her mom's smile, her own words in her journal, the protests sparked by her story. "I'm not a victim," she said, her voice clear, not loud but unshakable. "I'm Emma Carter, and I'll write my own story." James nodded, a small smile breaking through, the first in months. He didn't hug her, didn't need to. His hand rested on her shoulder, a promise to walk beside her, not ahead. The Richmond PD faced federal probes, Whitaker's resignation looming, Carson and Kane awaiting trial. Ramirez, now a consultant for a civil rights group, fed intel to investigators, his career gone but his conscience intact. Shirley's blueprint, Theo's tech, James's resolve, they'd cracked the machine, not broken it, but enough to let light in. Emma drove to school the next day, passing that intersection, her gaze steady. She wasn't fearless, but she was free. To everyone who's followed this journey, thank you. You've walked with us through pain, defiance, and triumph. If Emma's story moved you, hit subscribe on Revenge Ties, share it, leave a comment. Join us where every voice tells a story of courage, truth, and a new beginning. Keep fighting for your own truth, and we'll meet you on the road ahead.